This is Mission Control in Houston, and they are receiving pictures live from the space shuttle. There are so many UFOs in space and so many UFOs on NASA's cameras that Mission Control can't even find the enormous Russian Mir space station amongst all of the UFOs which are orbiting planet Earth.
Our next event on NASA television will be our video highlights for flight day number 8. These video highlights, which will last about 43 minutes, will begin at 1 p.m. Central Time. In the meantime, after we wait a little bit to see if we can spot the Mir once it moves into the sun, we will be stowing the KU band antenna and thus concluding the television downlink that we expect to get from the vehicle during this mission. We're at a mission lapse time of 7 days, 13 hours and 17 minutes. This is Mission Control Houston.
This camera is being controlled from the ground, and this camera is either on the Orpheus Space satellite, which has been deployed from the payload bay of the space shuttle, or it's looking through one of the space shuttle cockpit windows. The very bright objects are what you should be watching. It's very unusual to see this many stars on any of the NASA cameras, and I feel that this is actually a camera that is looking using an ultraviolet filter. Watch the very, very large bright objects, and you will see that they will start moving. There's 1 and 2 in the top right hand corner moving. You can see the Earth glow from the atmosphere at the top of the picture. And there should not be multiple objects moving within the vicinity of Mir nor of the space shuttle.
The Mir space station is now visible on the far left hand side of the screen, about an inch from the bottom of this particular picture. And there were also a number of shooting stars in that view. The camera has now moved to a point Okay, the Mir space station is the small flashing light in the center, about an inch from
Camera Charlie on a monitor.
the left-hand side of the screen. It's slowly
Tally ho on the camera.
It is slowly moving closer to the left-hand side and has a very light flashing to it.
We think on the middle of the screen, way to the left-hand side.
At this point, more and more UFOs appear, and you can tell by the commentator that she's becoming very confused.
And
We've seen a lot of meteors.
the streaks that are shooting across the screen are meteorites. In other words, shooting stars.
If there were this many shooting stars within the close vicinity of the Mir space station and the space shuttle, it wouldn't be safe to go into space. If they collided with the space shuttle, there would be a major accident.
We think you can see a flashing light just a little bit to the left of the center of the screen, very faint.
Now, ground station radar and also radar aboard the space shuttle and Mir actually tells Mission Control exactly the position of the shuttle and the Mir space station. The reason they can't find it on the radar is because the radar is full of UFOs.
We do see something flashing visually, but we're not sure that might be from our own leaker.
Mir sunrise in about a minute.
You'll notice that there are at least 5 large objects which must be a considerable distance away from the space shuttle, because we've seen the camera zoom backwards and forwards and those large objects did not go out of focus. If they were ice particles that were very, very close to the shuttle, they would be completely out of focus, because we can see that there are stars millions of miles away which are actually in the picture, and a camera would naturally defocus the nearby objects. Therefore, these very large objects are a considerable distance away, and that means that these large objects are exactly what they are: very large UFOs.
This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, we believe we were just able to spot the Mir spacecraft as it flies about 850 nautical miles behind Discovery. The spacecraft appeared as a very small flashing light, and then moved out of the picture as the camera was being moved to try to get a different picture. The one thing that we have noticed in the flight control room is that we've seen a large number of shooting stars during this 5-minute or so period when we've been watching.
Checkpoint initiates and work.
Thank you.
During this 5 or so minute period when we've been watching for Mir.
The Mission Control in Houston are describing these objects streaking past the camera as shooting stars. A shooting star is completely invisible. It's just a lump of rock in space. It only becomes visible when it comes into contact with the atmosphere. It becomes visible at an altitude of around 60 miles up, and the space shuttle is 350 miles up. And a shooting star comes towards the gravitational center of planet Earth. It does not fly away from planet Earth. It always flies in the direction of the gravitational pull of the center of our planet. These are therefore not shooting stars, and in actual fact there are so many of these objects. I would say that Houston should have called an emergency, because some meteorites are only the size of a grain of sand. They are called micrometeorites, and if one of those was to hit and collide with the space shuttle or Mir, it would create a major space accident. What we're now seeing is we're seeing that Houston are closing down the iris on the camera to try and filter out the huge number of UFOs which are visible on this footage. Now they've closed the iris of the camera down so much that you can see absolutely nothing apart from the light glare of the sun. When you speak to the press agencies and the various NASA departments and you ask a very simple question: which government agency is responsible for the safety and the security of the American people if there was a threat coming to our planet from outer space? They give you all kinds of weird answers, but generally it's just confusion at that question. NASA say they are not involved in any way in UFO research. You know what? That's absolutely true. They don't need to be, because every single time the shuttle was launched, it came back with footage of UFOs, and many times the crew members were just rookies, and they didn't have a clue. They had not been informed whatsoever of what to expect, apart from they were obviously told, if you saw something, don't talk about it. Just take a close-up look at this slow-moving object. It's obviously a very, very long way away from the shuttle. They would describe this as a shooting star. whoops-a-daisy, there's a much faster moving object there. Notice that both these objects are outside of the atmosphere, and that shooting stars, like I say, are only visible once they've entered the atmosphere and they start burning up, and that visibility only starts at an altitude of around 60 miles. And this is just the first example of many in this episode. My name is Chris Everard. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Spy Files, Strange Phenomena Investigations. My name is Chris Everard, and I travel the world interviewing authors, astronauts, and researchers, peeling back the mysteries of strange phenomena. In this episode, we investigate NASA's official footage and find that it is full of UFOs. Back in 2005, I made a 2-hour documentary film investigating official NASA footage, which seems to contain many images of UFOs. In this episode, we compare the official NASA footage with camcorder footage from ordinary people who captured very strange UFOs in the sky. If there is just one alien planet orbiting just one of those alien stars, then all the history books will have to be rewritten. Of course, when alien life is eventually confirmed, something else will also have to be rewritten. And that is all the millions of magazine and newspaper articles which poke fun at the idea that there could be some other intelligent life in the universe. Even though NASA have announced that the Kepler space program has confirmed the existence of more than 2,500 alien solar systems, most newspapers and TV shows are still making jokes about little green men. What would happen if aliens discovered planet Earth and their technology was more than 1,000 years in advance of our own technology? What would happen if there were in fact several species of aliens, all much more advanced than we are, who were in competition with each other and actually stealing genetic samples and mapping the human genome and the genome of all living creatures, getting ready to wipe out mankind and take over our planet? Would our governments tell us the truth? And what would happen if the aliens had technology which cloaked their spaceships from being visible to the human eye, such as we see in footage filmed in Mexico using 2 cameras at the same time, one camera filming in infrared and the other filming in natural color spectrum. This home camcorder footage seems to show that alien UFOs can hide themselves, just like Harry Potter's invisibility cloak. Back in 2001, I was a special guest on the Third Millennium TV show, which is hosted by Jaime Maussan from Mexico City. In that show, we had footage from a man called Pedro Avila. And Pedro had actually proven, using 2 video cameras, that UFOs were cloaking themselves, and on a normal camera, looking into the normal visible spectrum, the sky looked absolutely clear and normal. However, using night vision infrared, very strange things started to appear on his camera. Some of the UFOs even looked like dancing angels. But the most common phenomenon that we see in the UFO field of research amongst Mexican UFO researchers are these flexible tube-like objects. And inside those objects there are multiple spherical smaller UFOs. And these smaller UFOs are released by these tube-like or snake-like or serpent-like objects. And it is these exact same spherical UFOs which we see in Wiltshire, in England and other countries, making crop circles.
We recently brought you amazing video, perhaps the strongest tape you'll ever see. The mystical appearance of crop circles as they form in less than 10 seconds. Is their creator from this world or some other? Senior correspondent Jim Forbes takes another look.
On the face of it, this 8mm videotape is extraordinary. Lights circling above a British cornfield, seemingly creating crop circles below. The question, is this the real deal or a fraud, a hoax?
We're probably looking at a 50-50 chance of it being genuine.
Andrews has already commissioned film and video experts to analyze the tape, and now Strange Universe is requesting Ralph McCarran to do the same.
Gut reaction first time you saw it?
Looked real good.
McCarran works with special effects and high-resolution video and film for a major studio. Frame by frame, using a variety of enhancement techniques, McCarran has studied the tape closely to detect any sign it may have been doctored.
What's most compelling, he says, is that it appears that the video is shot handheld. And if you've ever shot your own home movie camera without a tripod, you know that with every breath you take, the camera moves.
Everything moves with the motion of his camera, and that's really hard to duplicate unless the person who shot this was a 3D expert.
The type of thing you see in blockbuster films. There seems no doubt this effect was intelligently created.
The question is then, is that intelligence from Earth or elsewhere?
I guess that's up to your own belief system.
All vents open. Copy.
10. GLS's go for main engine start.
In this episode, we go behind the scenes of the old space shuttle missions, where the cameras had ultraviolet imaging systems and a remote-controlled video camera on a satellite built by Mercedes-Benz called the Orpheus Spaz instrument, which was repeatedly launched from the space shuttle payload bay and used to film objects flying in and out of the Earth's atmosphere in the ultraviolet spectrum. Yes, these are UFOs, and yes, they've been filmed by NASA. The space shuttle was first conceived as a space plane by the Walt Disney Company. It was then developed as an idea by former SS Werner von Braun. There was a small prototype space shuttle called the HL-20, and an even smaller single-man shuttle too, called the X-Series. Both these smaller shuttles had alternative folding wing designs, and it was envisaged that the larger space shuttle, which was originally called the Space Guppy, would have a smaller space shuttle loaded into its payload bay. Why was this original design conceived? Well, once in orbit, a spacecraft only needs a relatively small amount of fuel to fly the 254,000 miles to the moon. And at one time, there were plans to use the larger space shuttle to take a smaller craft into orbit, which could then be deployed secretly and complete space missions which the public would know nothing about. There has always been a secret space program. In fact, the Pentagon have their own space shuttles, and no one knows whether that particular military space shuttle program has been shut down or not. Whilst television audiences were treated to NASA's own NASA Select cable TV broadcasts, super secret shuttle missions were being launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base, with space shuttles owned and controlled by the Pentagon. During the last moments of the Columbia STS mission, which ended in tragedy when the shuttle disintegrated, we see that the inside of the shuttle cockpit was very small, and duct tape is used to secure important air and electric and radio communication hoses and cables. The space shuttle was made of 250,000 moving parts, all constructed by the lowest bidder. The construction methods used in the space shuttle were envisaged at the beginning of the 1970s. By the 1980s, when the first space shuttle flew, this technology had already been superseded by the super secret stealth program. While stealth bombers had the ultimate aviation technology inside them, the good old space shuttle was flying civilian missions held together by duct tape. However, NASA have always given their astronauts advanced video technology. Whilst us on the ground had to make do with old-fashioned large clunky video cameras, the astronauts aboard the space shuttle had much more advanced and much smaller video cameras. In footage from inside the space shuttle, we see something very interesting, and that is that the astronauts have LCD flat panel TVs and even handheld video Walkman VCRs with flip-top mini screens. However, the cameras which NASA used to film UFO activity and also to film planet Earth aboard the space shuttle missions were old-fashioned tube cameras. They were not modern CCD cameras. NASA even described one of the space shuttle cameras as being black and white, which, as we can see here, it is not actually a black and white camera. In fact, when it glitches, you can see that this is actually a color camera. And NASA have desaturated the image for some kind of reason. All throughout the Space Shuttle missions, viewers of the NASA Select TV network were fed grainy, desaturated, fuzzy, bad quality images of planet Earth with old-fashioned tube cameras. Meanwhile, the astronauts themselves had prototype, state-of-the-art handheld digital CCD cameras and even miniature handheld VCRs. In fact, long before computers were capable of recording broadcast quality video, NASA had cameras which could record direct to hard drives. And these images were never ever seen by the public. They were downloaded to Houston Mission Control on what's known as the S channel. S is for secret. There is a longer, much more in-depth version of this television show being broadcast on the Enigma channel. You can watch the Enigma channel from anywhere on planet Earth using PlayStation 4, iPads, any tablet, any PC, and any Mac. Go to enigmatv.com to set up your account or visit our members site at enigmachannel.com.